What makes a young Christian woman from Australia pick up the Quran and never look back? Welcome to Muslim Convert Stories, where faith meets real life. Today, we dive into the powerful journey of Dr. Susan Carland, academic, feminist, and a proud Muslim. Her story? It might just change how you see Islam forever. Who is Dr. Susan Carland? Originally born into a Christian family of British descent in Australia, converted to Islam at age 19 after deep study and soul-searching. She is now a prominent Muslim figure, known for speaking on issues of feminism, Islam, and multiculturalism. Married to Walid Ali, another prominent Muslim intellectual and TV presenter in Australia. Meet Dr. Susan Carland, born and raised in Australia, in a loving Christian family. But at just 17, she started questioning everything. She picked up a copy of the Quran, not to convert, but to understand. What she found? Surprising. Peace, logic, strength. By 19, she embraced Islam, not because of a man, not because of pressure, but because it made sense. Today, she's a PhD, a speaker, a mother, and proudly Muslim. Her journey proves truth has no borders. Susan Carland didn't set out to become a Muslim. In fact, she was a believing Christian who describes her upbringing in the Baptist and Uniting Church as wonderful, positive, and without fault. I had the most amazing role models. Like it was the flawless Christian experience that I wish everyone could have. Growing up in a loving mainstream Christian family in Melbourne, Susan Carland was deeply involved in her local Uniting Church. Her faith was a cornerstone of her identity, a familiar and comforting presence. So when she arrived at university, a spiritual quest wasn't on her agenda. And yet, at the age of 19, during her first year of study, Carland found herself on an unexpected path. She became so intellectually and spiritually convinced by the tenets of the Islamic faith that she made the life-altering decision to convert. That decision set her on a trajectory she could never have imagined. Today, Dr. Susan Carland has become one of Australia's most recognizable and respected Muslim women. She's a powerful voice in public discourse as a social commentator, media personality, and author, but underpinning it all is her rigorous academic work. As a sociologist at Monash University, her research focuses on the complex intersection of gender, sociology, and the contemporary Muslim experience, directly challenging stereotypes from within the halls of academia. Her public life is also a partnership. She is married to Walid Ali, co-host of Channel 10's The Project, and himself a prominent Muslim academic and spokesperson. Together, they form one of Australia's most influential intellectual couples, navigating the complexities of public life, faith, and family under a shared spotlight, often sparking national conversations on critical social issues. But this transformation was far from easy. In fact, it began with intense opposition, mostly from herself. It was something that I really resisted. I was fighting it so hard. I didn't want to become Muslim per se. My initial impressions were shaped entirely by what I saw in the media, and frankly, I thought everything I knew about Islam looked horrible. It seemed oppressive, foreign, and completely at odds with the values of equality and freedom I held dear. The idea of embracing it felt like a betrayal of my own identity, but the intellectual curiosity of a university student is a powerful force. I couldn't reconcile the negative stereotypes with the kindness and intelligence of Muslim friends I was making. So it was the intellectual dimension that hooked me first. I started asking fundamental questions about the nature of God, purpose, and existence. The more I read, the more I realized I had to actively tune out the political and cultural noise that so often drowns out the faith itself. I had to go to the source and ask, what does this religion, in its foundational texts, actually seem to be saying about itself? And what I found there, in the pages of the Quran and the scholarly traditions, was a revelation. As much as a religion can speak for itself, what it communicated was profoundly different to what I thought I knew. It spoke of a direct, unmediated relationship with God, of a deep emphasis on social justice and compassion, and of an intellectual tradition that valued knowledge and inquiry. It was logical, coherent, and spiritually resonant. It was, to my complete surprise, incredibly appealing. Of course, this profound personal shift had immediate ripple effects, especially within her family. Announcing her conversion to her devout Christian parents was one of the hardest things she's ever done. As a mom of two herself now, Carland looks back with deep empathy and understands exactly why her parents weren't thrilled about her newly found faith. It wasn't about a lack of love, but a surplus of fear for their daughter's future. As a parent now myself, I can only imagine the sheer terror if one of my kids came home and said, "Hey Mom, I've joined this group that you don't know much about, and everything you know from the news looks absolutely horrendous. It's associated with violence and oppression in the public mind." Of course, I'd be quite concerned too. I would be worried for their safety, for how they'd be treated, for the challenges they would face. So now I can completely understand their perspective. At the time, in my youthful certainty, I was just like, "Gee, Mom, Dad, just trust me, let me live my life." But now, with the wisdom of hindsight and the experience of being a parent, I get it. I truly get it. That experience taught me a crucial lesson in empathy, a lesson that has become central to my work in fostering understanding between different faiths and cultures. In a world increasingly fractured by division, the path to harmony often begins with a single, courageous conversation. For Dr. Susan Carland, an academic author and prominent public voice, fostering that conversation between Christians and Muslims has become a life's work. Her journey, from a Christian upbringing in Melbourne to becoming one of Australia's most recognized Muslim women, gives her a unique lens on the bridges that can be built. For Christians and Muslims to truly be friends, she says, the first and most crucial step is simply to grow in understanding about each other. I think when you are very secure in your own faith, you're not threatened by other people's. There's no sense of unease, and that includes people of no faith. My own journey to this point wasn't instantaneous. It was a process of deep intellectual and spiritual inquiry. I grew up in the church, and I was always drawn to big questions about meaning and purpose. When I began studying Islam at university, it wasn't with the intention to convert but to understand. I was struck by its intellectual tradition, its emphasis on justice, and its profound sense of the sacred. The more I learned, the more I felt a sense of coming home. That process of questioning, of wrestling with theology, and ultimately choosing my path, is what built that security. It means I don't need others to validate my beliefs by sharing them. My faith feels robust enough to stand on its own, and that frees me to engage with others with genuine curiosity rather than fear. We don't have to have everyone be the same as us to like each other, to respect each other, or to build a functioning society together. This seems like such a simple concept, but we're failing at it spectacularly. I think we are so in our own silos at the moment, and we're so in our own tribes. It's the worst it seems to have ever been. The algorithms on social media feed us what we want to hear, reinforcing our biases and painting anyone outside our circle as the other, as a caricature, not a complex human being. This digital tribalism spills into the real world, creating suspicion and hostility. It's exhausting, and it's dangerous. My work in interfaith dialogue is a direct response to this. It's about deliberately puncturing those bubbles. And if we can just let go of this toxic idea that you have to be exactly like me, think like me, and vote like me for us to get along, then the problem starts to dissolve. The foundation of a healthy society isn't uniformity. It's the ability to navigate difference with grace and respect. When people think of Muslim worship, they often picture the more visible, structured practices. And of course, those are central. There are the obvious, very understandable acts of worship. You know, the 5 daily prayers, for example. These are appointments with God that structure our entire day, from before sunrise to after sunset. It's not just reciting words, it's a full physical and spiritual alignment. It's the mind, body, and spirit all in submission with the movements we do. Standing, bowing, prostrating. It's a beautiful grounding ritual that pulls you out of the chaos of daily life and reminds you of what's truly important. And obviously, we have Ramadan where we fast for a month. This is so much more than just abstaining from food and drink. It's a time for intense spiritual reflection, increased charity, and a deep sense of community, as families and friends gather each evening to break their fast together. So those are the obvious pillar acts of worship. But the Islamic understanding of worship goes so much deeper. Ideally, in Islam, could be an act of worship if we have the right intention and if we are conscious. This concept is called niyyah, intention. It's the idea that you can transform any mundane act into something sacred simply by dedicating it to God. So yes, there are specific prayers that we can say before we get dressed, before we eat, before we take a journey, before we start the car. These are prompts, reminders to infuse the ordinary with the divine. but it extends beyond that. Going to work to provide for your family can be an act of worship. Smiling at a stranger can be an act of charity, which is worship. Even sleeping, if you do it with the intention of resting your body to be able to serve God and others better the next day, can be an act of worship. It's about consecrating your entire life. And I understand that to some people from the outside that might sound quite restrictive, or why do you need all these rules and reminders everywhere? It can be misconstrued as a faith that's about control, but that's not how it feels from the inside. For us, I suppose, it's about a constant reconnection to God, to the divine, because our human nature seems to be a forgetful one. It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day, in our ambitions, our anxieties, our egos. We constantly sort of drift away from our spiritual center. So these practices, these intentions are not chains, they are lifelines. It's a process of constantly bringing ourselves back and reminding ourselves of our ultimate purpose. It's exactly like checking a compass. You're in the middle of a journey, and you periodically pull out the compass to make sure you're still heading true north. It's a moment of recalibration, of again reminding us, where am I going? What is my intention in doing this? Is this action pleasing to God and beneficial to others? This constant self-reflection, this humility, is what I believe allows for a more compassionate engagement with the world and with people of all faiths and none. Charitable giving is a cornerstone of many faiths. In Christianity, the concept of tithing, giving 10% of one's income to the church, is a well-known practice. But how does this compare to giving in Islam? Dr. Carland illuminates the Islamic tradition of zakat, a practice that is both a spiritual duty and a pillar of social justice. Zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, so it's on par with prayer and pilgrimage. It's something that Muslims have to give. It's not optional. It's considered an act of worship, a way of showing gratitude for the wealth we've been given, and acknowledging that the poor have a right within that wealth. The calculation is specific. It's 2.5% of our accumulated wealth held for a full year, things like cash and savings, not your home or car. And it's only paid above a certain threshold, the nisab, historically pegged to the value of gold or silver. This ensures that if someone's very poor, they don't have to pay it. In fact, they become eligible to receive it. And you're giving it to specific categories. This primarily includes the poor and the needy, but also those in debt or stranded travelers. It's a comprehensive social safety net. And what's really beautiful is that it doesn't have to necessarily be Muslims that you give it to. The principle is to help people who are in need, fostering a sense of shared humanity. The core philosophy is that our wealth is a trust from God, and the idea is that that money, that 2.5%, isn't actually ours, it belongs to them. By giving zakat, we are purifying our own wealth and our hearts from greed. It's a mechanism for circulating wealth and reducing inequality. So to not give it would be an injustice. It would be an injustice of us to withhold it from the people who it belongs to.